The huge repair station called Orbital Station Alpha floated in space like a shining metal spider web. Work lights blinked across its surface as repair crews moved between ships of all shapes and sizes. Some ships looked like smooth silver arrows, others like round bubbles with engines, and a few even resembled giant crystals that glowed from within. Jack Miller stood at the main control center, watching his repair teams through the giant window. His weathered face showed years of experience, and his eyes missed nothing as they scanned the busy docks. Humans had only been part of the space community for about 50 years, but in that short time, they had become famous for one special skill. "Boss, we have another emergency request coming in," said Pete, his assistant. Pete handed Jack a small computer screen showing the details. "It's a Dralid warship with engine trouble. They say they've tried 3 other repair stations with no luck." Jack nodded, not surprised. This happened almost every day now. "Put them in Bay 7. Tell Ben's team to prepare for high-temperature work." Pete tapped the instructions into his computer. "That's the 4th emergency this week. Word is really spreading about us, isn't it?" "That it is," Jack agreed, looking at the growing line of alien ships waiting for their turn. Some had traveled for weeks just to reach this human repair station. Outside the window, a team of human engineers in spacesuits crawled over the hull of a massive alien cargo ship. It looked tiny next to its huge engines. The ship belonged to the Vrex, tall 4-armed aliens who had been traveling between stars for thousands of years before humans had even reached their own moon. "What's wrong with the Vrex ship?" Jack asked. Pete checked his notes. "They say their jump drive makes a strange noise and loses power during long jumps. 3 Vrex repair stations told them they need a complete engine replacement." Jack smiled. "Sounds like a calibration problem to me. I bet Tom can fix it with a few adjustments." A loud alarm sounded, and both men turned to see a new ship approaching the station. This one moved slowly, trailing a cloud of sparkling energy from a damaged section. Its hull was dark blue and covered with strange patterns that seemed to shift as it moved. "That's the Dralid warship," Pete said. "Looks bad." The ship limped toward Bay 7, guided by the station's tractor beams. As it passed close to the control center, Jack could see the damage clearly. A whole section of the ship's engine housing was blackened and twisted. "Get me a direct line to their captain," Jack said. A moment later, the face of an alien appeared on the main screen. The Dralid had smooth gray skin and large eyes that blinked sideways. Small tentacles around its mouth moved as it spoke, and a computer translated its words. "Human station, we request immediate assistance. Our main power core is unstable. We have lost 90% of engine function. This is Chief Engineer Jack Miller. We're ready to help. What happened to your ship?" "We encountered an energy storm. Our shields failed. 3 repair stations have told us the damage is too severe to fix without months of work and new parts from our homeworld." Jack studied the readings coming from the damaged ship. The Dralid used technology very different from human designs, but he could see the basic problem. "Bring your ship in. We'll start work right away." As the alien ship docked, Jack called his best repair team together. Humans might not have the most advanced technology in the galaxy, but they had something special that brought ships from across the stars to their repair base. They knew how to fix things that others couldn't. Jack walked around the damaged Dralid warship, taking in the full extent of the damage. The engine section looked even worse up close. The metal had not just burned but twisted in strange ways, as if the laws of physics had briefly changed in that area. 4 members of his team followed, scanning the ship with their tools and talking quietly among themselves. The Dralid captain, who had introduced himself as Commander Grek, walked beside Jack. Though the alien stood almost 7 feet tall, he seemed nervous, his tentacles moving constantly around his mouth. "The energy storm hit us without warning," Grek explained, watching Jack examine a particularly bad section of damage. "My engineers say the power core is damaged beyond repair." The other stations we visited agreed. Jack nodded but said nothing. He knelt down and ran his hand over a section of the hull where the metal had flowed like water before hardening again. This kind of damage was unusual, but not unfamiliar to him. "Bill, check the power readings at junction point C," Jack called to one of his team members. "Mary, what do your scans show about the core stability?" Bill, a younger engineer with a reputation for understanding alien power systems, moved his scanner over the area Jack had pointed to. "Power fluctuations are cycling every 42 seconds. Definitely not random." Mary, who had once been a physicist before joining the repair station, studied her more complex scanning device. "The core isn't completely damaged, but the containment field is failing. That's why it seems unstable." The Dralid captain's translator made a strange buzzing sound, which Jack had learned meant surprise. "You can tell this just by looking. Our engineers spent days running tests." Jack smiled. "Sometimes fresh eyes see things differently. Your technology is advanced, but the basic principles are similar to other systems we've worked with." He led the group inside the ship through a series of narrow corridors until they reached the engine room. The large chamber was filled with strange equipment. At its center stood a pillar of swirling energy, contained within multiple fields that flickered dangerously. Two Dralid engineers moved aside as Jack approached the control panel. The symbols were alien, but Jack had worked on enough different ships to recognize patterns. "Your containment field is out of alignment because 3 of the stabilizers were damaged in the storm," Jack said, pointing to sections of the panel that showed red warning signals. "The field is trying to compensate, but it can't hold the pattern." "Yes, this is what our engineers concluded," Greg said. "The stabilizers cannot be repaired without returning to our homeworld for replacement parts." The other repair stations confirmed this. Jack exchanged looks with his team. Mary was already scanning the damaged stabilizers, while Bill studied the control systems. Tom, the team's materials specialist, was examining samples of the damaged components. "These stabilizers use quantum positioning, right?" Jack asked. "They maintain precise atomic alignment to create the field." "Correct." The Dralid captain seemed impressed. "They must be manufactured with exact specifications. Each is calibrated to our ship's unique energy signature." Jack nodded thoughtfully. "That's the normal approach. But there might be another way." He turned to his team. "Tom, could we adapt those hexen crystal arrays we salvaged last month? If we reconfigure them to respond to the Dralid energy pattern?" Tom considered the idea. "It's not a standard solution. But yes, I think we could create a temporary stabilizer that would work." The Dralid engineers made sounds that the translator didn't convert, but their body language showed clear doubt. "Impossible," one of them finally said. "The stabilizers must be exact matches." "Not necessarily," Jack said with confidence. "We humans have a saying. There's more than one way to solve a problem. Let us try our approach. If it doesn't work, you're no worse off than before." Commander Greg's tentacles went still as he considered the offer. Finally, he nodded. "Very well. Show us this human approach to the impossible." The repair station's workshop buzzed with activity as Jack's team gathered the tools and materials they would need. The large room was filled with parts from 100 different alien technologies, all carefully organized on shelves and in storage containers. Some glowed with strange energies, while others seemed to shift shape when not being washed directly. Commander Greg and his 2 engineers stood to one side, watching with obvious doubt. The Dralid engineers kept checking their own devices, their tentacles twitching nervously. "I still do not see how this can work," the senior Dralid engineer said. His name was Trell, and he had been maintaining their ship's systems for over 20 years. "The stabilizers must be exactly matched to our power core's frequency." Jack placed several crystal arrays on the main workbench. They were beautiful hexagonal structures that shimmered with inner light. These hexen crystals have a unique property. They can adapt to almost any energy pattern if properly prepared. Mary brought over a device that looked like a small metal box with many dials and switches. "This is a frequency mapper we developed last year. It can help the crystals learn your ship's specific pattern. The Dralid engineer made a sound that the translator interpreted as a disbelieving snort. Learn. Crystals do not learn. Not usually, Tom agreed as he carefully examined each crystal under a special microscope. But these are different. The Hexen use them in their living ships. They respond to energy patterns and can adapt over time. Jack connected the frequency mapper to a sample of the Dralid ship's power core that Trell had reluctantly provided. The device hummed to life, displays lighting up with complex patterns and numbers. Now we need to understand exactly how your stabilizers work, Jack said to the Dralid engineers. Not just their specifications, but the principles behind them. For the next 2 hours, Jack and his team listened as the Dralid engineers explained their technology. Many terms didn't translate well, but Jack kept asking questions until he understood the core concepts. Bill took careful notes while Mary made drawings and diagrams. So the key is maintaining a perfect triangle of forces between these 3 points, Jack said finally, pointing to a diagram Mary had created. The stabilizer doesn't just contain the energy. It guides it into a specific pattern. Yes, exactly, Trell said, seeming surprised that the human had grasped the concept. This is why they must be made to exact specifications. The pattern must be perfect. Jack nodded, then turned to his team. We can do this, not by copying their stabilizers exactly, but by creating something that achieves the same result in a different way. The humans spread out, each working on a different part of the solution. Tom carefully cut the Hexen crystals into new shapes. Mary programmed the frequency mapper to transmit the Dralid energy pattern. Bill worked on creating a housing that would protect the new stabilizers and connect them to the Dralid systems. As they worked, Jack explained their approach to the watching aliens. Your technology is very advanced and very specialized, he said. Each part is designed to do one thing perfectly. That's great when everything works, but hard to fix when something breaks. He picked up one of the crystal pieces Tom had prepared. Human technology developed differently. We focus on flexibility and adaptation. When we couldn't make perfect parts, we learned to make imperfect parts work together in new ways. The Dralid captain watched with growing interest. This is why other species come to human repair stations. This creative approach. Exactly, Jack said with a smile. We're not the most advanced species in space, but we might be the best at fixing things with whatever we have available. After several hours of work, the team had created 3 devices that looked nothing like the original Dralid stabilizers. Where the originals were sleek metal cylinders with precise markings, these were irregular crystal structures housed in metal frames with numerous small adjusters and control circuits. They are not beautiful, Commander Grech observed. No, Jack agreed. But let's see if they work. The engine room of the Dralid warship hummed with dangerous energy as Jack and his team carefully positioned their makeshift stabilizers. The room's lighting flickered, casting strange shadows across the alien equipment. In the center, the power core pulsed with an unstable rhythm, its containment field visibly wavering. Everyone stay behind the safety line until we activate the first stabilizer, Jack ordered, his voice calm despite the tension. The 3 Dralid engineers stood well back, their body language showing a mixture of hope and doubt. Tom moved forward with the first crystal device, its irregular structure catching the light from the core. Ready for installation at point 1, he called. Power levels rising. Mary warned from the monitoring station. We need to move quickly. Jack nodded to Tom, who carefully placed the first stabilizer into the mounting bracket they had prepared. As soon as it was in position, Bill connected it to the ship's systems through an adapter they had built. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the crystal began to glow, its internal structure shifting slightly as it responded to the energy patterns of the Dralid ship. Lines of light formed inside it, creating a complex web that pulsed in time with the core. First stabilizer is responding, Mary said, eyes fixed on her readings. Energy pattern is. It's adapting. The crystal is synchronizing with the core frequency. The senior Dralid engineer, Trell, moved closer to check his own instruments. His tentacles went completely still, a sign of surprise in his species. The field strength is increasing by 27%. How is this possible? No time to explain now, Jack said. Let's get the other two in place while this is working. They moved quickly, installing the second and third stabilizers at precise points around the power core. Each one began to glow upon activation, the crystals inside shifting and adapting until they formed a perfect triangle of energy that surrounded the unstable core. As the third stabilizer came online, the effect was immediate and dramatic. The flickering containment field stabilized, becoming a smooth, continuous barrier. The dangerous pulses from the core settled into a steady, controlled flow. Warning lights on the control panels changed from red to green one by one. Field stability at 92%, Mary announced, grinning widely. That's well within safe operating parameters. Power output normalizing, Vil added. The core is responding to the new stabilizers. They're actually working better than the originals in some ways. Commander Grek moved to the main control panel, checking every reading carefully. His engineer Trell did the same, moving from one station to another with increasing excitement. This is unprecedented, the commander finally said. The other repair stations insisted our ship would need months of work and replacement parts from our homeworld. You solved the problem in less than a day with materials you already had. Jack shrugged modestly. The solution isn't permanent. Those crystals will need to be recalibrated every few weeks and eventually replaced. But they'll get you home safely where proper repairs can be made. How did you know this would work? Trell asked, his professional curiosity overcoming his earlier skepticism. We didn't know for certain, Jack admitted, but we've seen similar problems before, just in different contexts. The principles are often the same even when the technologies are different. He walked around the power core, admiring how the three makeshift stabilizers worked together to contain and control the powerful energy within. Your stabilizers were designed as perfect, specialized components. Ours are adaptable and responsive, like comparing a perfect machine to a living organism, Mary suggested. Exactly, Jack nodded. Sometimes flexibility is more important than perfection, especially when things go wrong. The Dralid captain extended a formal gesture of respect with his upper tentacles. My ship would have been lost without your creative approach. When we return to our fleet, I will ensure all captains know of the human repair station and its unique capabilities. Jack smiled. We'll be here when you need us. That's what humans do best. We fix things. 3 months after the Dralid warship repair, Orbital Station Alpha was busier than ever. The docking bays that had once seemed oversized now struggled to handle the constant flow of alien vessels seeking human help. Ships orbited in a waiting pattern sometimes for days before a repair bay became available. Jack stood in his office, looking at the schedule displayed on the large screen covering one wall. Every bay was filled, and the waiting list scrolled endlessly. We've had to turn away 12 ships this week alone, Pete said, looking worried as he handed Jack the latest report. Word has spread through at least 20 different species now. They're coming from farther and farther away. Jack frowned. We need to expand. Again. This would be the third expansion in 2 years. Talk to Station Command about adding at least 10 more repair bays on the East Ring. The office door slid open, and a tall, thin alien entered. Its body was like a stick figure made of shiny blue metal, with joints that moved in impossible directions. This was Ambassador Krill of the Zeth Confederation, a group of species known for their advanced technology. Chief Engineer Jack, the ambassador greeted, its voice coming from a small translator box attached to what might be considered its chest. I hope I am not interrupting important work. Not at all, Ambassador, Jack replied, though in truth he had dozens of urgent matters waiting for his attention. What can I do for you today? The ambassador moved to the window overlooking the main repair bay, where a team of humans worked on what looked like a living ship made of coral and metal. The Zeth Council has been monitoring your repair station's activities with great interest. The number of ships seeking your services has increased by 312% in the past year alone. We've been busy, Jack admitted, but I didn't realize anyone was keeping count. The ambassador turned, its body bending in a way that would be impossible for a human. What you may not realize, Chief Engineer, is the impact your station is having on interstellar commerce and relations. Ships that would have been abandoned are returning to service. Species that rarely interacted are meeting at your station while waiting for repairs. Jack hadn't thought about these wider effects. For him and his team, they were simply doing their job, fixing whatever came their way. The Council has a proposal, the ambassador continued. We wish to fund a training program. Send your human engineers to other stations throughout the galaxy to teach your methods. Jack raised his eyebrows in surprise. The Zeth were known for their pride and their technological superiority. For them to suggest learning from humans was unprecedented. Our methods aren't really something you can teach in a standard way, Jack explained. It's more about a way of thinking, an approach to problems. Exactly, the ambassador agreed. That is what we wish to learn. This human perspective. Before Jack could respond, an alarm sounded. Peak quickly checked the alert on his tablet. Emergency in Bay 4. The Nuvian ship's gravity regulator has failed. Jack was already moving toward the door. Sorry, Ambassador. We'll have to continue this later. To his surprise, the ambassador followed. May I observe? I wish to see these human methods in action. They hurried through the station corridors until they reached Bay 4. Inside, a crisis was unfolding. A ship that resembled a giant smooth stone was emitting pulses of energy that distorted gravity around it. Tools and small objects floated upward before crashing down again with each pulse. The repair team had taken cover behind shield barriers, but one technician was trapped near the ship, holding desperately to a support beam as the gravity shifted wildly. What happened? Jack demanded. We were installing the new cooling system when the gravity regulator suddenly activated, the team leader explained. It's cycling randomly between 0G and double Earth normal. We can't reach the controls, and Lisa is trapped out there. The ambassador watched as Jack quickly assessed the situation. Your technician is in grave danger, it observed. Standard procedure would be to evacuate the bay and use remote drones. Jack shook his head. No time. I need to get to that ship now. Without hesitation, he grabbed a tool belt, and timing the gravity pulses, he sprinted across the bay floor during a high-gravity moment. As the gravity began to fade, he leaped toward the ship, catching a handrail just as weightlessness took effect. The ambassador watched in astonishment as Jack, through timing, determination, and quick thinking, not only rescued his technician, but managed to reach the ship's control panel and stabilize the gravity system. Remarkable, the ambassador said quietly. This is what we wish to learn. A month after the Zeth ambassador's visit, Jack sat in a meeting with the station's leadership team. The room was filled with both humans and aliens who now served as part of Alpha Station's expanded operation. The training program is going well, Mary reported. She had been put in charge of teaching human repair methods to aliens from various species. We have students from 22 different worlds now. Some are struggling with our less structured approach, but most are adapting. Jack nodded, pleased with the progress. The station had grown tremendously, with 30 repair bays now operating around the clock. What had begun as a small human repair outpost had become one of the busiest locations in this sector of space. The meeting was interrupted when Pete burst into the room, his face pale. Emergency broadcast coming in from the Dalaran mining colony. They need immediate help. The large screen on the wall activated, showing a frantic alien face. The Dalaran was breathing heavily, its diamond-shaped eyes wide with fear. This is Mining Colony Epsilon. We have a critical situation. Our main reactor is overloading and our coolant systems have failed completely. We have 3,000 workers on the station, and no way to evacuate everyone in time. Jack stepped forward. This is Chief Engineer Jack Miller from Orbital Station Alpha. What's your reactor type, and how long until critical failure? Class 7 fusion reactor with quantum containment. Estimates show between 4 and 6 hours before catastrophic failure. The room fell silent. Everyone knew what that meant. A reactor of that size exploding would destroy the entire mining colony. We're 6 hours away at maximum speed, Pete said quietly. Even our fastest ship couldn't get there in time. Jack thought quickly. What about the Mavericks transport in Bay 12? Their slip drive could make it in 3 hours. The Maverick ship is still undergoing repairs, Mary reminded him. Their navigation system is completely offline. We don't need their navigation system, Jack said, an idea forming. We just need their engine and a volunteer pilot who can fly manually. The room erupted in objections. Manual flight in slip space is suicide. It's never been done successfully. The calculations are too complex for any organic brain. Jack held up his hand for silence. I know it's risky, but those colonists have no other option. He turned back to the screen. We're sending help. Start moving your people to the central hub, as far from the reactor as possible. And send us all your reactor schematics immediately. After the transmission ended, Jack faced the team. I need volunteers for a repair team. And I need someone who can fly that Maverick ship manually through slip space. To everyone's surprise, Bill stood up. The young engineer was quiet and methodical, not known for taking risks. I've been studying slip space mechanics in my free time, he said. I think I can do it. Jack looked at him carefully. This isn't a simulation, Bill. One mistake in slip space. I know, Bill said firmly, but I can do it. Within 30 minutes, a team was assembled. Jack would lead the repair crew while Bill would pilot the Maverick ship. They gathered in Bay 12 where the sleek, silver transport waited. It resembled a giant teardrop with small wings along its sides. The Maverick's captain, a tall insect-like being, was explaining the ship's controls to Bill. The slip drive requires perfect calculations, without the navigation computer. We'll have to do it the old way, Bill said, studying the control panel, using visual reference points and manual timing. Jack loaded the last of their equipment. They had gathered everything they might possibly need to repair an alien reactor, plus some things no engineer would normally consider useful. Is this really possible? Mary asked quietly as she helped Jack secure the equipment. It has to be, Jack replied simply. Those people have no other chance. As the team boarded the ship, the entire station crew gathered to watch. What they were attempting was considered impossible by most spacefaring species. Manual navigation through slip space, followed by an emergency repair of an alien reactor with whatever tools they could carry. But as the ship departed from Alpha Station in a flash of blue light, everyone watching knew one thing for certain. If anyone could achieve the impossible, it was a team of human engineers. 1 year after the mining colony Epsilon crisis, Orbital Station Alpha had changed beyond recognition. What had once been a single repair station had grown into a vast complex of interconnected facilities. At its center stood the new Interstellar Engineering Academy, its curved walls gleaming in the light of the nearby star. Jack walked slowly through the main hall of the academy, looking at the display cases that lined the walls. Each contained artifacts and images telling the story of human engineering ingenuity. In the center of the hall stood the most famous exhibit, the makeshift slip space calculator that Bill had used to navigate to mining colony Epsilon. Next to it was a twisted piece of metal that had once been part of the colony's reactor core. Still hard to believe we pulled that off, said a voice behind him. Jack turned to see Bill, now the Academy's chief instructor for advanced space navigation. Sometimes the craziest plans work out, Jack replied with a smile. The mining colony rescue had become legendary throughout the galaxy. Against all odds, Bill had successfully navigated the Maverick ship through slip space, using only manual calculations and his own instincts. When they arrived, Jack's team had less than 2 hours to prevent the reactor meltdown. "The new class arrives today," Bill said, checking the time. "First batch of students from the Outer Rim worlds." Jack nodded. After the mining colony rescue, requests had poured in from across the galaxy. Species that had previously looked down on primitive human technology now sent their brightest engineers to learn the human approach to problem-solving. They walked together to the main auditorium where hundreds of beings from dozens of species waited. Some floated in anti-gravity fields, others stood on specialized platforms, and some weren't visible at all except for the shimmer of their containment suits. All had come to learn from humans. As Jack stepped onto the stage, the room fell silent. Many of these aliens came from civilizations thousands of years older than human society. Some had developed technologies that seemed like magic to most humans. Yet here they were, waiting to learn from him. "Welcome to the first official class of the Interstellar Engineering Academy," Jack began. "Many of you have traveled great distances to be here. You come from worlds with technology far more advanced than Earth's. So why are you here?" He paused, looking out at the diverse audience. "You're here because technical advancement and problem-solving ability are not the same thing. Your species have perfected specific technologies, creating specialized solutions that work perfectly. Until something unexpected happens." Jack picked up a simple wrench from a table beside him. "This is one of the first tools humans created, thousands of years ago. It's simple, versatile, imperfect. But with this basic tool, a skilled human can fix problems that specialized devices can't handle." He set the wrench down and picked up something that looked like a small crystal disk. "This is a Zeth quantum analyzer, incredibly advanced, perfect at its specific task, but useless for anything else." A ripple of movement passed through the audience as various species reacted to his words. Humans never had the luxury of perfection. Throughout our history, we had to make do with limited resources and imperfect tools. We learned to see connections between different systems, to adapt existing solutions to new problems, and to work together combining different perspectives. Jack gestured to the large window that showed the repair docks where ships from across the galaxy waited for human assistance. "That's why you're here. Not to learn our technology, which is still basic compared to many of yours. You're here to learn our approach, how to think like human engineers." In the front row, Jack noticed Ambassador Krill of the Zeth Confederation, along with representatives from a dozen other advanced species. Even the Drellid had sent students, including Trell, the engineer who had once doubted human methods. This academy represents something new in the galaxy, a place where different approaches to technology can come together, where we can learn from each other and create solutions that none of us could develop alone. As Jack concluded his speech, he felt a deep sense of pride. Humans had found their place among the stars not through superior technology or military might, but through their unique ability to fix the unfixable, to see possibilities where others saw only problems, and to adapt to whatever challenges the universe presented. The human repair stations had become more than just places to fix ships. They had become symbols of hope across the galaxy, proof that even the most difficult problems could be solved with ingenuity, determination, and the special human gift for making the impossible possible.